You're not afraid that those tariffs will cause inflation?
Well, look, in 18 and 19, we put the highest tariffs we've ever had on China, and prices came down. No, I don't think so. I'm not worried about that.
Okay.
I'm always worried about it, but I think you look at the empirical evidence we've had before that it doesn't. My fears of inflation and I have strong fears of inflation. And if you watch our show today, kind of highlighted with the increase in inflation, and because it comes from too much money being printed. It's this massive government spending, and here's the reason: people for years said, "Well, debt doesn't matter, deficits don't matter because it never affects the working class person."
It deflates the value of the dollar.
Thank you. It destroys the purchasing power of the dollar. The reverse of that's inflation, and this is where we are. And now people, I think, now, Jimmy. Here's where we're in a terrible position. Since we have 36 or 37 trillion dollars face amount of national debt, contingent liabilities on the dollar are over $100 trillion net present value. Let's put that aside, but the face amount is that basically a third of that has to be refinanced every year. I think Scott Bessent right now, as Treasury Secretary, has, $7 or $9 trillion of government securities he's got to sell. And if you look at the 10-year Treasury, if you start doing this at higher prices, that gets embedded. That financing cost gets embedded into life. I believe right now in this budget, if you look at it, the gross interest expense, not the net, but the gross interest expense, I think, is $1.3 or $1.4 trillion. If that's not the number directionally, it's higher than the defense budget. The debt of our country is one of the leading, if not the leading, national security issue for the nation, because we don't have the flexibility, the range of flexibility. Back for your audience that's old enough to remember the Arab oil embargo and then the inflation that exploded. We paid the price for guns and butter in Vietnam in the late 70s and destroyed Jimmy Carter. When Reagan came in with Volcker, and remember, interest rates I think were like 17%. They had to wring that out of it. The United States at the time, we were a manufacturing superpower. We had virtually no debt or very little debt. We had a clean balance sheet. Our working force, our blue collar working force, was probably the most educated in the world because of the greatness of the American public school system and the Catholic school system. We were a different country. Today, we're not that country. So we're in a financial crisis, and our options and range of alternatives are narrowing every day. That's why 2 weeks ago or last week, when Doge started and the OMB guys just sent out a memo that said, hey, look, we're just taking over here. We just want to put a temporary pause on all money going anywhere because we want to see where this $5 trillion is in the system. MSNBC and people had a meltdown. And that's just talking about where the money is in the system. Think about when you have to start cutting. If we have to cut $1 trillion a year of this deficit, and a couple of $100 billion comes out of defense, and you got to take $400 or $500 billion out of social programs or maybe Medicaid, you're going to have riots in the streets. And this is why I say people think the hardest days of Trump's administration, and you got all these people running around, everybody's loving Trump, right? They all love him. You're like the bros loving. You have the converging pincer moves of massive cuts in federal spending that you're going to have to do, coupled with the deportation of 10 million illegal alien invaders. You tell me what that's going to look like in this country. It's going to be both of them have to be done, and you got to be empathetic in doing it, but they're going to be hard, and it's going to be tough, and it's going to be quite contentious.
Come see us live in Los Angeles, Buffalo, Toledo, Montreal, Ottawa, Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, London, Liverpool, Birmingham. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.